Hello, this is Mark with SFG Top Performance. With me today is Charles, Derek, and Jason. Charles, would you like to start us off with an update on equipment and facilities, please?
Yes, I can. As far as updates right now, we're still continuing to work on our anhydrous plants at Milo, updating the loading facility. And we're going to also update the loading facility at Melcher, which is just making the dock a lot easier to walk on. It just needs an overhaul. Equipment-wise, we purchased a rogator here over the last week. It's going to be used we're going to have a top dress machine now. There's been a lot of demand for side dressing urea. So we bought a machine. We're trying to source a box, and we will have one ready to roll by this winter. We have also updated a few toolbars, trying to buy some heavier duty toolbars to update, put in the fleet, and take some of the smaller ones and kind of trade them out. So that's all the main things that's changed here in the last couple weeks.
Well, I appreciate that update. It's important that we continue to update our equipment, making it better for ourselves to service the farmer and for ourselves to do a better job servicing the farmers. Jason, do you want to give us an update on the general crop conditions in our area?
Certainly. In our area, we're very fortunate. I feel sorry for the people north of us that I see on the news that everything's flat, the grain bins are in a bundle, the buildings are in a pile. I really feel sorry for that group of people. Fortunately, our crops look very good for the most part. The corn, we see some things in it that we don't always like. The soybeans, there's a lot of potential there. We're going to need another rain or two in most areas, but boy, the potential's there to have extremely good crops in 99% of it. There are a few that, the corn's laid over. Some of it is broke off. Some of it, the roots are just tipped up and they might still make enough contact that we'll get a crop. But what's just lodged, the guys are going to cuss it, but there's going to be a crop in most fields. I am seeing a few things that I don't like in the fields, but I don't know, how at this point I see some fertilizer deficiencies in the corn. I was in a field the other day and dug some roots, and the roots only went down about 5 inches. It had super grow on top, and that kept that corn extremely good, but it didn't grow the root development to get to the nitrogen. So, and I see several fields, I always hear the nitrogen response to corn when we're picking our varieties. And I always kind of thought maybe there was a little hoax to that, but I believe it now. These varieties that are a high nitrogen demander, they're telltale signs of nitrogen everywhere. So that's very true. It can be a hybrid side by side. And, it's the ones look extremely good. The one that's a high response has nitrogen deficiency. And we're seeing the ones that skimp a little bit on fertilizer, it's showing up. There's a lot of things with that. And Derek, you're working a lot further with that. Will you go on and continue with?
Yes, I sure will. Like Jason says, we've seen some nitrogen deficiencies in corns in the pockets. The wet holes are really showing up that were there early spring. I think we're losing a little bit of that nitrogen, or we've lost it, and we're starting to run out of gas in some fields a little bit. And like Jason said, the ones that have a high response to nitrogen, the ones that need that extra shot, are really showing up this year. We've had really good growing conditions, so they're just running out of gas. We've seen that firing coming up from the bottom, and there's two different yellowings that we look at. So nitrogen deficiency will start yellowing from the midrib out, where potassium deficiency starts on the edge of the plant. We haven't seen a lot of potassium deficiency in corn yet this year, but I've done a lot of tissue samples, and we've seen more in beans actually. I took 8 tissue samples last week, and every single one showed deficient or responsive in potassium on the soybean side, and that's telling me that our soybeans are going to be a little short. And I think that's because, one, we missed a little bit of rainfall, and we've had a good crop conditions this year, so those bean plants are just asking for more potassium. In every one of those cases, we've had dry fertilizer put on the year before the corn only. So I think we really need to look at our soybean programs and maybe think about putting some potash on before those fields. These tissue samples that you take late in the season can be really used to figure out which fields to soil sample this fall as well. So those ones that are hurting a little bit or ones that are showing deficiencies, we really need to get in there this fall and see what's going on in that soil. One popular aspect of the soil that I've been talking to guys a lot is called the CEC, And what that stands for is the cation exchange capacity. What that is just how many nutrients the soil can hold. And as a general rule of thumb, soils around this area are usually 10 to 18 at the highest, probably. There are some 20 and 25s, but usually in those teen range is where the CEC is. And as a rule of thumb, you multiply that by 10 to figure out how much nitrogen that soil can hold. So there could be soil out there that can only hold 150 pounds of nitrogen total. So even when we put 180, 200 pounds in the spring beforehand, that should be enough for the crop. But if that ground can't hold it, then we're going to be deficient. So we need to really think about split application in those areas, and that's where having our top dress machine is going to come in really handy. So we're going to be able to figure out where those areas need to be, and we do that with tissue samples and soil samples, and we'll be able to take care of the fields that need side dress applications.
Derek, is it better for us to do a planned program for side dressing, or just look at what we might need for nitrogen at the last minute?
So it's definitely better to plan the program, because usually if you don't plan it, you put 180 pounds up front and say, well, that's good enough. By the time, V5, V6 corn comes around, and like this year the crop conditions were really good, so we've had a few guys say, well, I want to add that 40 extra pounds. The problem is they probably needed that 40 pounds at that time anyway, and they wasted the money at the beginning of the time, or beginning of the crop.
Putting too much on to begin with.
Yes, they were the soil can't hold that much, can't hold 180, 200 pounds. So we just need, if we have a planned split application, generally we see benefits anytime we split it. Even if you put super grower anhydrous up front, come back with UAN with the chemicals, or come back with a top dress urea, just anytime we tend to split the nitrogen application, we see really good benefits out of it.
Jason, when you were talking about the condition of the crop, how long before we're going to see combines running?
Boy, that's a good question. I think, beans haven't started to change yet, and I always say at least 30 days after you see the first yellowing, and I haven't seen much of that yet. So I'm guessing it's going to be 40 days, 45 days at a minimum. I'm sure there's some areas that have some low group 2s that I haven't seen that will probably be before that. So I'm probably speaking out of turn for these varieties. I know there's some areas that like to get some short maturity in, get in there, combine things, use that market advantage if there is one, and test the equipment out to make sure it's good to go. So I'm sure there's some of that's going to be sooner, but I don't see a lot of turning yet. So I'm guessing that 40, 45 days would be my guess.
Okay.
From what I'm seeing in the fields.
Okay. That pretty well covers our topics for today. I want to thank everyone for joining us at SFG Top Performance, and thank you for your business, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.